Hey folks, welcome to Slack Season 2 Team Roundup. As we go into the playoffs, what we're going to do here is go into each team one by one and kind of summarize how things have gone and maybe how things will go into the playoffs. So we're going to go through each team in the league, and we're going to talk about their league performance, so how they did in the league itself, the key player to watch out for going into the playoffs, the previous highlights, so big matches that this team has played in the league, and finally the main strengths of the team. Okay, so without further ado, our first team up is Luc et les Garçons, coached by Team David. Okay, so to talk about their league performance, they had a rough start in the league, winning only 3 out of the first 9 games, but they had a massive bounce back. So at the close of the season, they actually won 6 out of the 8 games to close off. And also, Coach David did a really good job of leveling the team. So you'll see here that for Bretonnia, their strongest players tend to be the blitzers, and all 4 blitzers here are all leveled up to 4. And the next strongest are the blockers, and 3 out of the 4 blockers are leveled up, 3 of which have guard and 1 with a strength up. So yeah, did very well. David got to actually made a really strong push with that 6 out of 8 wins, and got to a playoff qualifier, and narrowly missed out. So yeah, very unfortunate not to make the upper bracket. But I think he'd be quite happy with how the league turned out. Just needed a few wins to go his way towards the start. Key player. Okay, so it was Han Sul who picked up the medal for the Golden Fist. So Han here. But I actually think the player to watch on Dave's team is Kit Fisto. So not too actually far off Hansel with the casualties. So if we go in and have a look here, 12 casualties inflicted. The reason I'm picking him is because I think that this player with Tackle, Mighty Blow and Piling On is on paper the deadliest player in the league. We have lots of Mighty Blow throughout the league. We have a few Piling On, and we have Claw, obviously, that we'll see later on. But there's no player that has the Tackle, Mighty Blow and Piling On. The only thing we're missing here is Claw, and obviously Bretonnia don't get access to Claw to make him literally the ultimate killer. But with Tackle, Mighty Blow and Piling On, I think this player could be very, very dangerous and key in kind of unlocking one of the main strengths of this Bretonian team. So highlights. Huge win against the AI team State Brawl, actually winning 6-0. Another one standing up to It's a Skull with a 1-1, and I don't know if anyone saw that game, but very much standing up and trading blows with It's a Skull, one of the probably most dangerous teams to do that with, and very much gave as good as it got. And then on the other side of things, and it's funny, we'll talk about this in strengths, but winning the pass off against 16 mutual friends. So the kind of the other end of the spectrum, this is very much a running, passing game, and David's team came out the victor in that one. So finally, to wrap up Luc et les Garçons, we're going to talk about the strengths. So to me, there are 2 main strengths to this team. The first has been a strategy that Coach David has used right from the off, and that's their passing game. So we have 4 players with catch. That's just Bretonnia. They have blitzers and they start with catch, so that wasn't David's doing. But David has then augmented that. So we have Han Sol with pass and safe throw. We have Obi Do Kenobi with sure feet and nerves of steel. So this means that this team is likely to pass and run, and we can see that in the stats with 156 yards of passing and 18 successful catches over the league. So yeah, that's been a main strength of this Bretonian team. They have I think I said Hans Sol had all those passing skills, but it's actually Luke here, we can see. So yeah, pass and safe throw. So the idea here is Luke picks up the ball and he passes it to Obi Do Kenobi, and they have so many skills that it's quite easy to make a decent pass, and then with sure feet, it allows Obi Kenobi to make a go for it. So yeah, actually quite a strong passing game coming out of the Bretonians. So the second strength is one that I think developed towards the tail end of the season, and that's the bashiness of this team. So we can see that there are 3 guard on the blockers, very much helping the line there. There's a strength 4 piece with Jabba Le Caban, and obviously 2 mighty blow pieces and tackle, so mighty blow and tackle. So any dodgy teams are going to really struggle against that firepower, and then obviously 1 with piling on. So all that together means this team can really stand up against bashy teams, and I think we saw that in the playoff qualifier against Bellatorious Bombshells. Really, especially in the first game, kind of took on the Orcs and knocked a lot of them out. And I think that's going to be a huge strength going in, that David can start with a strategy of a passing game, but if things, say the passing game doesn't work out, the ball falls to the ground, the Bretonians can then step up to the line and kind of trade blows with really the bashiest teams in the league. And I think it'll be interesting to watch if David does do a little bit of a run in this playoff. Will he start getting a reputation for how dangerous his players are? Because Kit Fisto, I think, can really, really knock some heads. Okay, and that's Luc et les Garçons. Okay, next team up is It's a Skull. Okay, so league performance, how did they do? Extremely, extremely consistent, losing only 1 game all season, and that was to Bear With Me. And I'm not sure if anyone watched that game, but It's a Skull. Coach Enzo was very much in that game for right up until the end. This wasn't one of those games where Bear With Me just kind of dumps all over a team. If anything, I think Coach Henso was maybe unfortunate not to at least come away with a draw. So yeah, just very, very consistent. Did very well in terms of SPP gathering. So It's a Skull gathered 257 SPP and held on to 94% of it, as you kind of expect with it. Mostly a few AV9s and then the rest AV8. Probably a little bit more than you would expect. You'd expect a few of those beastmen to die. But because of that, he's been able to go into the into the playoffs with multiple kill pieces. So kill piece here, kill piece here, kill piece here. So 3 kill pieces plus the Minotaur with Mighty Blow also can do some damage, and has enough in the bank to afford replacements should he need them. And being a bashy team, goes into the playoffs with also 2 subs, level 1 beastmen, but they're still bodies on the line. So if you come to trade blow with this team and you actually do manage to knock 1 or 2 pieces out, Hensei will be able to replace them. So I think he can be very, very happy about how the league went. Okay, so key player. So while It's a Skull has a reputation for bashing, I think their key player is actually their 1 ball playing piece, which is Wizards of Morcar. So Wizards of Morcar obviously won the Golden Boot with 12 touchdowns, and I think he, more than anyone else, is absolutely essential to the strategy that Hensei is going for, and we'll talk about this in strengths. But everybody else is there to do 1 job, and that's to front up the line and hit things. Wizards of Morcar is the only piece that does the other job, which is pick the ball up and score. So if you were to knock, for example, Marauders of Chaos out, yeah, that's not great for Hensei. That's a Claw Mighty Blow piece gone. But, Claw Mighty Blow, Mighty Blow, Mighty Blow. He has players that can do the same job. Whereas if you knock Wizards of Morcar out, all of a sudden he's picking up on a 3+, he's dodging on 3+. You've changed the game. So yeah, definitely the key player for the Chaos team there. Highlights of the season. Beating the 2nd and 4th place teams, so beating New Balls Please and Recipe Street, and not really just killing Recipe Street, just mangling them, killing 3 players in that game. So yeah, that'll be 2 results that show that It's a Skull can really trade results with any team. And then finally, strengths. So this is an easy one. With 210 injuries inflicted in 17 games, It's a Skull does one thing, and it does one thing really well, and that's removals. 4 Mighty Blow pieces, 2 Tackle pieces, 2 Claw, 3 Guard, and 2 subs to back it up if things don't go well. It's a Skull wants to get into a fight, and it wants to remove your players. That is Hensei's main goal. And it plays a very, very consistent style of Blood Bowl to go with that. So It's a Skull only lost 1 game playing that way all season. So I think you can expect a slow grind where the line will push up. You'll constantly be getting hit by Claw and Mighty Blow and Tackle if you have a dodge piece. And he'll have Wizards of Morcar nestled in the back, probably in a cage, and then gets to the end of the line and Wizards of Morcar makes a break for it. That's been like the number one strategy. I think Hensei has like 6 yards of passing. Yeah, 6 yards of passing done all season, which is, Chaos don't tend to pass very often, but you do have an Agility 4 piece that can pass on a 2+ pretty easily. So it's the one strength, but it's an incredibly effective strength because if you're not a bashy team, then you're going to have to try and screen it. But if you are a bashy team, he has Claw that will absolutely rip your pieces apart that you need to stand in the line. He'll take out your Black Orcs, he'll take out your Mummies, he'll take out your big beast players that have AV 9 and 8, and he'll win the game that way. So yeah, that is It's a Skull. Okay, next up is Recipe Street. So, how did the season go? So it was quite mixed. 12 wins puts this team joint second in wins, but 4 losses is more than the top 3 combined. So very, very all over the place. In terms of resource-wise, 7 deaths and 2 firings puts this team at only 64% of the 273 SPP retained. So quite a lot of SPP was lost just through attrition. And then going into the playoffs, 11 players, I actually haven't gotten around to buying the player yet, but 11 players when I actually buy a lineman. And then relying on a decent roll of winnings to be able to buy another player if needed for replacements. And then if you look at the skills, we'll talk about this in strengths, but I think good job done on the positionals. Positions have lots of abilities. But the linemen, I think, as a Dark Elf coach going in after 17 games, what you would hope is you have blodge on quite a bit of your linemen, and there's no blodge at all here. And there's no dodge in the linemen, which is going to make moving these movement 6 pieces quite difficult. Okay, so key player. So I think the Blitzer Guac El Mole narrowly squeaks this one. Blodge Tackle Dark Elf with an agility boost. So this elf can get Recipe Street out of some really, really tight corners. So picking the ball up in a tackle zone on a 2+, receiving the ball in one tackle zone on a 2+, dodging from a tackle zone into like a 1 tackle zone into a 1 tackle zone on a 2+. Really, really useful in getting out of those tight corners. And the way games tend to go for this Dark Elf team is they go down players and they need a player like Guacamole to just kind of get out of really narrow situations. Top scorer in the team with 7 touchdowns, and also the most experienced elf on the team as well with 39 SPP. Highlights for this team. The 4-0 win against Luc et le Garçon is, I think, the joint highest defeat of a human opponent. And then back-to-back victories against 5th placed and 6th placed Land Before Halftime and Zomcons would probably be the 3 there. So strengths. So the 6 positionals are all leveled up, and they're all leveled up quite a bit. So you have a 4, you have a 4, you have a 3, you have a 3, and you have a 2, and you have a 2. So that also means 6 blodge, or 5 blodge and 1 rodge with wrestle and dodge. So theoretically, these elves should be, the positionals should be very difficult to actually pin down unless you have lots and lots of tackle. I play a slow, cautious running game with a strength up blitzer here and a guard lineman here to try and just punch holes in lines and get in behind. Also, 2 witch elves, both who have leveled up a safety block and a safety wrestle, means a lot of potential surf play. So that is Recipe Street. Okay, next up is Good Honest Folk. So, league performance. Coach Jaffa is a rookie coach, so finishing last in the league for the humans. You'd expect that from a player who hasn't played the game before. And only 1 win against human opposition, but that team was against me, 4th place Recipe Street. So if you combine that with draws against 3rd place It's a Skull and 5th place Land Before Halftime, I think this shows that the team can produce some really, really big performances. And that kind of is all that matters when it comes to playoffs. In terms of resources, Jaffa gained 200 SPP, which is the lowest out of all the teams, but managed to retain 89% of it, which means he doesn't go in as the lowest SPP total. Out of 12 players, 10 are leveled up at least once, so a really, really good use of the SPP gathered. Jaffa isn't going in with like one super player, and the rest of them really, really lacking skills. He's got a really nice spread of, like, blocks, for example, which is really, really good. Finances are also in really good shape. 1 sub and 150 grand, maybe to buy another sub or to replace. With 150,000, he can replace any piece that he might potentially lose in the playoffs. Key player. This was a really tough one because I think Jaffa there's a few teams like this in the league that kind of play as a full unit, and there's not really one player that stands out. But I'm probably going to give it to Johnny Carson. So Johnny Carson, a blodge blitzer with guard. So he's going to play a crucial role in fighting back against the Bashy teams with guard and being so tough to knock over with blodge. He has 3 touchdowns and 1 casualty to his name, which isn't like the stats that some of his teammates would boast. Some of his teammates have scored more touchdowns and have more casualties. But just from looking at Jaffa's games, I think a lot of Good Honest Folks games come down to brawls at one point or another. Like the ball falls in the ground, everybody comes around and tries to pick it up. And that's, I think, when Johnny Carson really, really shines. He gets in there, he is very tough to knock down, and he provides guard. Only one of 2 players that provide guard, the other one being the Ogre. And I think that's really, really essential because it's essentially giving everybody strength 4. And I've just seen a few games where Jaffa's placed them really, really well and comes out of the melee better than how he would if Johnny Carson wasn't there. Highlights, this one's an easy one. The 1-0 victory against Recipe Street, and then the 2 draws against 3rd and 5th place teams. So, strengths. So, I think Jaffa likes it when things get messy. So, just from the games I've seen and looking back on highlights when I was doing this, I think Good Honest Folks' best performances have been in games where, like I said, the ball's on the ground, no one can pick it up, everybody is kind of gathered around it, and with so much block, dodge, and sidestep on the fields, that's when his players really, really shine in this environment. The mix of being able to pick the ball up in tricky situations, combined with some serious firepower in Lenny Small, the block guard Ogre, Johnny Carson, and Hal Moore, the Mighty Blow Blitter, means if you feel like you're no longer in control of the situation, I think you're in trouble, because I think Jaffa is kind of strongest in that position, and I think he's done a really good job on pouncing on that. I think his other strength, which I think has been commented by several of his opponents, is he's actually quite good at placing his players up in screens. So on the defense, it doesn't matter so much when he comes up against fast passing or leaping teams. but up against teams that play a very slow, steady, I'm going to cage up and slowly push down. I think Jaffa is actually really strong against those teams because he's able to place his players well in a screen. And then if that team panics and just says, okay, I'm just going to base everyone, we're going to get into a melee, I think Jaffa then, like I said before, is quite good in those situations too. Yeah, so that is Good Honest Folk. Okay, next up is Bear With Me. I should have said bear with me as we go. Fuck. Okay, start the whole thing over again. No. Okay, so Bear With Me. League performance. Okay, well, this one's easy. An incredibly strong season. So coming first in the league, unbeaten, and winning 15 out of the 17 games available. Like, what can you say about this team? They have... The only teams they didn't beat is second placed New Balls Please and 7th placed 16 Mutual Friends. They've beaten everybody else. So just a really, really strong... And beaten some teams just really well as well. Just ending games very quickly. So yeah, just a very, very good season in terms of points. And also pretty good in terms of... Or really good in terms of resources as well. They gained 301 SPP in the whole league, which makes them the second highest, and they retained 87% of it, which means that Bear With Me go into the playoffs with the most SPP out of any team in the league. And boy, did they get some nice skills with that SPP. So Block Bear, Movement Catcher, Agi, 2 Agi Blitzers. Just like, if you're constructing a team... you know, you'd be halfway there with the skills that Jim has on some of these players. Finances are also in good shape. He goes into the playoffs with 13 players, so 2 subs, and enough in the bank to fund most replacements. And pending, you know, a decent yield on winnings after a game, should be enough finances to replace even the most expensive, say the Bear, for example. So yeah, it's just really, really strong all around. Key player. Okay, so this is another tough one because there are several really important players on this team. Very, very tempted to give it to Show Countenance. I think Jim uses the Bear really well. And block on it just means that he's so safe as well. But I'm probably going to give it to Blitzer Brace Fetch. So level 4 with Wrestle Dodge and an agility boost. 11 touchdowns in only 14 games. 14 games, 11 touchdowns. That's incredible. So it puts him as like the most lethal player on this team by far. He's recently got Blodge, so added Rog onto Wrestle Dodge. So yeah, just both on offense and defense. You know, he leaps into a cage on a 2+. If he gets a boat down, that's a sack. So yeah, just incredibly, incredibly good player. Highlights. Like where the whole league basically was a highlight. So yeah, heavy victories against Bellatorious Bombshells, Zomcons, Undead as Disco, and Land Before Halftime. Also beat, like, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, beat just everybody, except for obviously 2 teams. So yeah, the whole league, just a all-round highlight. And strengths. Okay, so like, where do you start here? Okay, so the obvious stuff first, the leap play. It's obviously leaping is just very unpredictable. And you know, Jim is mostly going to come up against opponents that haven't played Blood Bowl much, and I include myself in that as well. I've played Blood Bowl a decent amount, but I still don't really know how to defend against an all-leap team. I think probably only Yannick is the only coach in the league that actually has proper experience on how to play against that. And when you add on 2 players doing it on a 2+ rather than your usual Kislev 3+, it's just very, very hard to lock down. A movement 8 piece in Baguette Supply brings even more scoring potential. So, you know, allows sprints to the line. Accept Stick with plus Agi and Guard allows for incredible cage busting potential. So, you leap in with Accept Stick, who provides guard. You then leap in with Brace Fetch, who goes in for the sack, and all they need is a boat down. And there's a sack, and there is very, very little you can do to stop that. And then also, if the game turns into a brawl, Show Countenance is there to provide block and guard. So, even trying to, usually against Kislev, what you want to do is you want to go up, you want to fight them, you want to hit them, because they don't have block, they don't have dodge, and they're all mostly AV 8 and 7. So you want to hit them hard, and that's how you beat them. But if you try and do that, all of a sudden you have a guard block bear in your face. So yeah, that's kind of tricky as well. I think if this team rolls well on leaps, there's almost nothing you can do to stop them. And even if they don't roll well on leaps, you just have to say that Jim is a very experienced coach who's shown over the league that he can make the best out of bad rolls. I've seen several games where leap hasn't gone well, where he's rolled badly, where he's actually taken injuries, and he's actually managed to win all those games. So yeah, there's a reason that this team are unbeaten, and there's a reason why this team are massive, massive favourites to win Season 2. Okay, so that's Bear With Me. Next up, Land Before Halftime. The Lizards. Okay, so how did their season go? It was pretty good. The Lizards make up the last of the block of the top 5 before a bit of a gap emerges to 6th place. So obviously there's a huge gap between 1st and 2nd, and then you have 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th all kind of in amongst each other, and then there's another gap to 6th. So think Liverpool winning the league this year and how that league shaped up then. I think that works. Land Before Halftime are extremely consistent in their placing in the league. This is hilarious. They've lost to no opponents below them. So no opponents below 5th have beaten Land Before Halftime, but at the same time, they, against their opponents above them, so 4th, 3rd, 2nd and 1st, they lost 3 of them and drew 1. So just really, really consistent in how the performance as regards to their league position. Resource-wise, they have gathered 254 SPP, but only managed to retain 74% of the SPP. So that actually leaves them in the lower half of the SPP table. So, this is kind of what you'd expect as a Lizard coach. Your skinks are going to die. However, if you look at the team, 6 out of the 7 skinks are all leveled up at least once. So yeah, that's really, really impressive. Just constant leveling of skinks. And when we go into strengths, we'll kind of explain why that is. And then Land Before Halftime also finished the season with the largest squad at 14 players and have money in the bank for replacement of any piece. So yeah, resource-wise, going into the playoffs looking pretty good. 2 Source is not leveling up. It's very difficult to level up Source, but that would be one little gap there. Key player. Okay, so I think Ducky the Skink is the pick here. Level 4 Skink with Blodge, Sidestep and plus Agi. The guy also has 5 touchdowns to his name as well. He's pretty much the perfect Skink. I mean, you'd probably want to get plus, if you're being really picky, you want to get plus movement on him. But like Blodge, Sidestep, Agi on a Skink is absolutely incredible. So yeah, this guy is incredibly dangerous. Highlights: 4-1 victory against fellow upper bracket team 16 Mutual Friends, and a draw to 3rd place It's a Skull. So yeah, 2 very different games there, showing that they can take on one of the fastest teams in the league and also stand up to the bashiest team, or one of the bashiest teams in the league. Okay, so strengths. So I like to think of Lou's Lizards like Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. Gegenpressing, or Gegenpressing, or Gegenpressing, whatever that is, whatever that German word for extremely, extremely aggressive, claustrophobic closing down is the main kind of style that Lou likes to play. And a lot of that pressing comes from the skinks. So you'll have the ball, he will really aggressively push you. he'll base everyone with Sauruses, he'll run his skinks around the side, and he'll just try and smother you, and just try and pop that ball out, and take the ball and go and run. So out of the 19 touchdowns that the Lizards have scored, 18 have come from the skinks. So he plays really aggressive skink play. He'll send his skinks into the opponent's half, and then just, get one of them free, run the ball through, hand it off to them, and then that they'll run in and score. He's also managed to level 4 out of 6 Saurus, who at Ag 1 are notoriously difficult to level. So, getting block on them and getting one Saurus, Thick Nose, level 3, block and Mighty Blow is going to be a nightmare when it comes to bashy teams trying to kind of out-bash the Lizards. Also, I think one final ace up Lizard's sleeve is a somewhat unusual skill check for some of the pieces. So, for example, Petri, the shadowing diving tackle skink, I think that'll absolutely catch players out in the playoffs. I bet that'll happen at least once. And then also Flyer, the break tackle before block Saurus, as I like to call him. Usually just block. That's what you want to get on all 6 of your Saurus, and then you can go off to do things. But Lou's decided to go break tackle instead of block, so that will give a little bit of unexpected mobility to the line. Now, unfortunately, that player Flyer also did take a move bust, but still, I think that break tackle could catch people out. So yeah, really heavy pressing. He's going to smother you. He's going to try and get you to make a mistake, and then he's going to pick the ball up with his skinks and run off and score. Lou has shown himself to be a very, very consistent player, constantly beating or drawing against coaches that finish below him. And if he continues that form into the playoffs, I think that'll absolutely carry him to the latter stages. And if he then manages to change his form towards the teams that finish first, second, third, and fourth, there's no stopping him then. He could go the whole way. Yeah, so that's Land Before Halftime. Okay, next up, we have the Zomcons. Okay, so how did the season go? This is a bit of a weird one. A relatively comfortable season until the latter stages. So Zomcons found themselves comfortably in the upper bracket for the majority of the league, but some heavy defeats to Bear With Me, Undead as Cisco, and a costly defeat to Holistic Medicine saw them scrambling for the upper bracket place. But an excellent win against second place New Balls Please saw them finish 6th. So yeah, really, really good close against New Balls Please. I think you'll be a little bit concerned about the form before that recently, but an excellent win against a coach who has really stuffed a lot of teams with heavy scores. So I think Striker would be delighted at his finishing place. SPP wise, or resource wise, incredibly successful season. So taking on 256 SPP and retaining 100% of it. Only one of the 2 teams to do so, and the only team to not lose any players at all. They go into the season with 12 players, but having said that, finance wise they could be in a bit of trouble if an expensive piece dies. So you can see them here, 60,000. Say if a flesh golem or a werewolf were to die or get a fireable injury and the winnings weren't much, that could cost them. But yeah, going in with a full squad plus 1 sub, which is absolutely fine. Key player. So I found this very difficult, not actually for the reason that I found for Jaffa, where the whole team was a unit, more because there's actually 1 or 2 star players in this team, and it was very difficult to pick them out. It's very hard to look past Stitch, the plus AG Blodge Ghoul, but I think there's actually a more important piece in the team, and that's Return to Meat. So this guy is this good boy is a level 4 plus strength block tackle werewolf. And the reason I'm going to give it to Return to Meat over Stitch is because of the way this coach likes to play, which is isolating opponents through blitzes and then running back to safety. And Return to Meat is at the heart of this. You don't need to base most pieces if you're running in to blitz with a strength 4 piece. So he's able to run in, blitz a strength 3 piece, knock it down, and then run back again. So nobody gets to trade blows at him. And that's absolutely crucial. he's also scored 8 touchdowns and produced 9 casualties, so there's that as well. So yeah, definitely the star player, I think, and the key player for this Necromantic team. Highlights. So the 2-0 victory against New Balls Please is the easy one here. I think it's hard to overstate the importance of this game. Not just what it did to Striker, which is essentially move him into the upper bracket places, but I think the league as a whole, as it removed 2 of the best players from Yannick's team. Also, I think for the coach, it's a game that really solidified for me his style of play. I think when I watched Gus's games in the early stages of the league, it was, I couldn't really see a strategy, but there's a very, very key strategy now, and I think he's kind of solidified that against the Skaven match. In the Skaven match, sorry. So strengths. So while It's a Skull has the reputation for kills, it's actually Zomcons who are the most lethal team in the league, producing 7 kills and 215 injuries. So like I said, Coach Striker has developed a kind of a sniping brand of Blood Bowl, where he'll isolate a player with a werewolf blitz, usually return to meat. And if that doesn't produce a removal, Scary Maguire, the dirty player zombie, will come in to finish the job. It's a much different brand of player removal style to Hensao's slow bash grind, but as the stats show, it looks even more effective. So he also comes in with 2 flesh golems, 1 with block, and 2 whites, both with guard. Means that this team can stand up to a brawl against most other teams, and with 3 tackle on the pitch, they're an absolute nightmare for any teams that plan to dodge. And on top of all that, we have Stitch, the Agility 5 Blodge Ghoul, who's Zomcom's top scorer. Interestingly enough, he's also only brought out for offensive drives, so that means it's near impossible to remove him before he can get his hands on the ball. If he's on defense, you can't target him to really tackle his offense. Stitch is only going to come out at the offense, and you have to deal with him then when he's going to be protected by all of Striker's players. For me, this is my dark horse to go a long, long way in the competition. I think despite 6th place in the league, I think we could see this team hitting a top 4 finish, potentially getting into the finals, and who knows what happens then. Yeah, so that's Zomcons. Okay, next up is Bellatorious Bombshells. Okay, so how did the league go? Well, I think that rookie coach Bellatorious will be delighted with how the season went. Never playing a game of Blood Bowl before this season, he's made it into the upper bracket with a very, very consistent set of results. I think results that initially started out as upsets, but as we all kind of became familiar with watching Bellatorious play, I think they stopped becoming upsets and they just became wins. So yeah, really, really good. Obviously getting 8th spot, and I think it does have to be said that only having to get into the playoff due to a fairly unlucky result against Peter's 16 Mutual Friends. We all know how that game ended with the War Dancer doing mad stuff. And, that was unlucky. And I think if that didn't happen, he would have gotten into the upper bracket fine. But no, had to go through the playoffs. And did really well in that playoff as well. So yeah, I think he can be really, really proud about how his first season went. In terms of resources, 207 SPP gained, and as you'd expect with an all AV9 team, 98% of it retained. 12 players, all of which have leveled up at least once, so even his sub has a level up, which is really impressive, and enough money in the bank to replace any player that has gone missing. One tiny snag is he is going to go into the first playoff game lacking a blitzer. Now, he is in the upper bracket, so he does have time if he loses that game to get all his blitzers back, but that will hurt because it's a guard blitzer, and we all know how important guard is to the orc teams. Key player, this is a really tough one to call. This is like, I think, Jaffa's team. They all play so much as a unit that it's very difficult to pick. But I'm kind of going to go out there a little bit, and I'm going to pick the thrower Morsla here. So I think Blitzers, Morkva and Grak will find themselves very hard done by this call, because if you were to ask me who their best player was in the league, it would be one of these two. But that's not what the question is. The question is, what is their key player going into the league, or going into the playoffs, sorry. And with the thrower picking up recently a plus AG, and with 2 other plus agility blitzers in the team, Bellatorious has now found himself with a pseudo elf team, essentially. It remains to be seen if the rookie coach can take to a passing game as well. He's taken to a batting one, but if he can, Morkfo will be absolutely crucial in quarterbacking that transition. You don't, throwing on a 2+ with pass is really, really strong if you're also receiving on 2+. So yeah, if Alan does manage to move into that type of game, I'm not saying that should become his whole strategy, but add that element to his game. So he does the bash, things don't go that well, or it's coming down to turn 8 or turn 16 and it's not looking like the bash is going to get you a touchdown. Having that out where you can dash a blitzer off, dodge him through a tackle zone, and then use Morslet to pass like 5 or 6 spaces into the end zone could be incredibly strong. So what are the highlights for this team? So I think for a coach that hasn't played the game before, Bellatorious has some really good highlights. Beating fellow rookie coach Cine 2-0, beating Luc et Le Garçon 2-0, Holistic Medicine 2-0. But I think obviously the standout result has to be the playoff qualifier against Coach David. It had to go into extra time, and that is really fatiguing. But Bellatorious managed to come away with the win and got them into the upper bracket. So yeah, some really, really good highlights there. Strengths. I think it's very similar team to It's a Skull. The Bombshells play a very slow, deliberate style of play. It's pick up the ball, cage the ball, slowly bash your way down the pitch, and then just slowly walk in. Those two teams, they're very similar. However, while It's a Skull, I think, are better at the removal side of the game, Bombshells are better at actually moving the ball. So I've watched a good few of Bellatorious' games, and he's really surprised me at how well he can actually move an orc cage when he's not up on player counts. So we saw that against only as recently as the game against David. The first game was a 1-1 draw, and I think if you go back and watch that game, looking at it, Bellatorious is in the middle of the field. There were only 4 turns or 5 turns to go and score. David wasn't down players, had a decent screen up, but Alan actually managed to switch the play and run down the side, and that actually eventually led to him going and scoring. And he did the same to me as well. I was 2-0 up. I had what I thought a decent screen, and he punched a hole right through it and went on to make it 2-1. So yeah, really, really good at moving the cage, which to me I think is probably the most difficult part of the Orc game. And as another strength, like I said before, in key player, he now has 3 Agi4 players, including 1 with pass. So this unlocks like serious potential for a different style of play. An Agi4 piece with pass and then 2 Agi4 receivers has turned Alan's team into one of the best passers in the league. Obviously they're going to be a little bit behind David's and Peter's teams, but then after that, he's probably up there with the rest of the teams in terms of passing. We haven't seen that yet from Bellatorious, but if we do, that'll be a serious strength that he can potentially unlock. So that's the Bombshells. Okay, next up is New Balls, Please. The Dirty Rat team. Okay, so how did the league go? So I think this season splits very neatly into the first 16 games of the season and then game 17. So finishing in second with an eye-watering goal difference of 38, tying with Jim's 38, and miles ahead of anybody else. It was a very scathing season, so with some absolutely massive pasting of AI and other players, but also player attrition. However, I think up until game 17, these losses were mainly less important pieces and very much of the kind of typical of the scathing churn that you see. But then game 17 comes along, and a level 3 thrower and a level 4 Storm Vermin die against Zomcons. So Coach Yannick finishes the league with 327 SPP gained, which is the highest out of any team, but only 64% of it retained, meaning he goes into the playoff with 208, which is the 6th highest. So he's dropped down all those places. I think finance-wise, the team is also in trouble. With 12 players, I think Coach Yannick will find himself a little light on subs as a Skaven coach, and also with 20,000 in the bank, a good bit off replacing a potentially important player like a Storm Vermin, Rat Ogre, or Gutter Runner. So those, that will worry Yannick a bit. And it's not his fault at all. You have 2 players die in the very last game of the season. You're going to go into the playoffs, hurting. Key player. So I think Gutter Runner Marble is the pick here. He has 11 touchdowns and 5 passes to his name. I think 11 touchdowns puts him silver for touchdowns scored. I think he's the clear pick here. So much of the danger that New Balls Please present is through their gutter runners, and Marble has been a successful outlet for Yannick for so long. He also has diving tackle, meaning he's both useful on offense and defense as well. So highlights. So yeah, there's a few here. New Balls Please have given some opponents nightmares with their scoring prowess, beating Luc et Le Garçon and 60 Mutual Friends 4-0, which again is the joint highest defeat of a human player, and also being only one of the 2 teams to avoid defeat against first place Bear With Me. So yeah, he can be very happy with that result as well. Strengths. So this is an easy one. So speed. So Yannick has an incredibly potent offense, as you would expect as a Skaven team with these gutter runners. I've watched games of New Balls Please where it's been over within a few turns. Like we're at turn 5, for example, and they're already 2-0 up, and the game is just done. It's over. They'll run through the gutter runners will run through the lines, and they'll stay within scoring distance, waiting for either a pass or the ball to break. And once they have it, they'll just outrun any other player in the league. You won't catch them. There is no team in this entire league where things seem to be going fine, and then it's immediately not fine. Like, you'll be pushing and you'll be close. This actually happened to me against Yannick. You'll be pushing, everything's grand. Yannick will knock the ball free, and all of a sudden, gutter runner's taking it, pass to another gutter runner, and you're gone. Like, you're in his half, and within a turn, he's, within scoring distance, and you're nowhere near him. So there's no other team in the league that is so dangerous all of the time in terms of conceding. I think while some of the bashing talent has been removed by Zomcons, taking out the Storm Vermin, there has to be a mention to the level 3 Rat Ogre, Wrecking Ball, and the Mighty Blow Storm Vermin Cannonball. So they provide the teeth to the team as well. So definitely, while there's a lot of scoring potential in this team, Yannick still does have the strength of running in, sniping players with probably Cannonball, and then running back. So yeah, obviously another huge favourite going into the playoffs. I think we will see Yannick paste at least one more player, I think, before the season is over. And if you're that person, and I'm saying this to myself as well, don't feel bad. He absolutely has this in his locker. It's just Skaven. Okay, next up, Undead is Disco. Coached by rookie coach Cinny. Okay, so how did the season go? So I think one game defines this entire season for Cinny, and it's the 0-0 draw against Wild Javelins, which is the AI team. Cinny being the only player in the league to not win all the AI games. So had that been the routine AI victory that they always normally are, this team would be sitting in 7th place and awaiting their upper bracket matchup. So although he finishes in 10th, it was an AI game that held him back, not a human game. So I know Cinny is very down on how the league ended up and stuff, but just kind of mull on that for a sec. We're going into an all-human playoff, and Cinny had enough human wins to actually get into the upper bracket. So we absolutely have to keep that in mind going into this human versus human knockout playoff competition. So yeah, unfortunate draw to the AI side. I think this has to be seen as an amazing season for rookie coach Cini. Had he beaten the AI, he would have been the highest placed rookie coach in the league. And he has some huge wins, not just wins, like big wins against way more experienced coaches that we'll go into in highlights. I think SPP wise, he's also been incredibly unlucky with just 74% of his SPP retained. And that, when you compare it to fellow undead coach Striker's 100%, is just not fair. Like, that's not fair. Undead are supposed to be hard to kill. 74% SPP retained is not fair. That said, if we actually look at the team, it's in relatively good shape going into the playoffs with 13 players, obviously one out, but it's just a zombie, so that's not too bad, and enough money in the bank to finance a replacement. So, Cini could just fire this zombie now and buy another one because he's in the lower bracket and a loss might, be it. So he could just very easily now go in with 13 players, even though this player is missing. Key player. So for me, it's between the two mummies. Hilariously, I can't even use stats to separate them as they both sit on a whopping 11 casualties each. I think, however, when you actually look at the skills of these mummies, I think so much of the good work done by Coach Cini is in locking down opponents into a bash war, and I think mummies are absolutely key to this. They're strength 5 and they're producing guard, and I look at games like, especially the game against Striker, he just couldn't do anything. It was just red dice after red dice because of what these mummies were doing, and I think Titus Hardy picking piling on is going to diminish that quite a bit. I hope I'm wrong, and we go into the playoffs and Titus Hardy just removes like 3 guys a game with this. But to me, the point of mummies is you want to end the turn and they're standing up, providing guard with strength 5. You can't knock them away, so you're just going to have to deal with everybody else being 1 strength up on Cini's team when it comes to a brawl. But if you have one of the mummies lying down, that's just all gone. So to me, I look at Measurehead and I look at Break Tackle and Juggernaut and Guard, and this is more what I would expect. Juggernaut really useful just in case Cini rolls a block. That'll keep him on his feet, and then Break Tackle for not breaking away and scoring, but more likely breaking out of a tackle zone to move into a better tackle zone to provide guard. I think Measurehead would be a lot more useful to Cini in the playoffs, and that's why he is getting my key player. Highlights. I think again, like fellow rookie coach Bellatorious, I think Cini has to be extremely proud of some of these results. 2-0 against Luc Le Garçon, 3-0 against 16 Mutual Friends, 1-0 against fellow rookie coach Jaffa. But for me, the 3-0 against 6th place Zomcons stand out. I've played a lot of games against Gus. Gus is a good Blood Bowl player, and I think he's going to show that in the playoffs. And beating him 3-0 is like that's a hammering to a team that finished 4 places above Cini. That's an incredible result. And I know he is very down on his chances going into these playoffs, but just trust in the results that you've gotten. You absolutely have it in you to beat players who've played a lot more hours in Blood Bowl than you have. So yeah, strengths. So I kind of alluded to this before, but for me, this team is best in a fight. So 4 guard on the pitch, 2 of which is strength 5 guard. If the game becomes a brawl with the ball loose, I think this team is an absolute nightmare to play against. Saw this with coaches Striker and Hensau, the 2 most lethal teams in the game. They found trying to fight back against Undead as Disco extremely challenging. In Striker's case, it was a heavy defeat, and in Hensau's case, I think he got extremely lucky with the 2 removals against the mummies. And then, even then, only managed a late 1-0 victory. So I think if you're going into this match against Undead as Disco and your game plan is to stand up toe-to-toe against them, and there will be teams that has to be their game plan because, that's just the type of team they are, I think you're going to be in trouble against Undead as Disco. I think if you're playing a fast, running, passing style, you're going to find it a lot easier, but if you get into a brawl, or even if something bad happens with your passing style and the ball scatters and Cini's able to get around it, I think he's an absolute nightmare to play against when it comes to that type of kind of brawl, scrappy Blood Bowl. Okay. Next up is Holistic Medicine. 2 more to go, thank God, because my throat is getting really sore. Yeah, here we go. So, how did the season go? Well, they finished 11th, so I think it has to be an underwhelming season for Holistic Medicine. But to me, that place doesn't tell the whole story. They're 1 GFI away from beating Hensau. I think that GFI would have made it 2-0, and I don't think Hensau is scoring 2 touchdowns after that. 1 GFI away from opening the scoring against me, Recipe Street, and who knows how the game would have turned out then if Andra got the first touchdown. And also, to me, this is going to sound a bit strange, but I think Andra was the closest to beating Jim out of anybody else in the league. There was a moment where so many of Jim's players were removed, and the ball was there. Holistic Medicine had more players, and just a sequence of bad rolls happened, and Jim was actually able to turn a 2-1. But I think that game should have been 2-1 the other side. So yeah, there's been a few matches that I think have really gone against this Underworld team, and that sees them in their 11th position. SBP wise though, miracle season. Like, absolutely miracle season. They have 100% retention, which is wild. Like, look at their AV. 7, 7, 7, 7. Look at all that 7. They have so many stunty players, which, if you don't know, provides an extra 1 to the injury roll. Like, these players should be dying. And how Aundra has managed to have 100% retention on the SCP is, to me, the most out there stat I think we have in this league. Yes, that's a huge positive for him. Goes into the player with 13 players and a massive bank of 220,000, but a level 3 goblin and a level 2 plus strength Skaven lineman out. And obviously, when you're in the lower bracket, a player missing in the next game is way more costly than if you're going to the upper bracket, because you lose, you're out. So yeah, potentially we might see maybe an extra player being bought just to bulk out the players. Who knows? Key player. Okay, well, it's acupuncture. Like, what do you say? 23 casualties, 8 higher than the second place. The most experienced player in the league with 62 SPP. The next closest is Luc from Luc et Le Garçon with 50. There's 2 ways to look at acupuncture. The first is it's just fluke. He only has Mighty Blow as a damage stat. He is getting numbers that you would expect from a Claw Pommer. And that's an extra 2 damage skills on top of the one that he has. It's going to dry up in the playoffs. He's just not going to get the dice that he was getting in the league, so you're fine. There's the other way of looking at it, which is, yeah, fair enough, he only has Mighty Blow, but he also has Horns, which means that he's guaranteeing himself to die quite a lot on his blitzes. He has Tackle, which means it doesn't matter if he's blitzing a dodge piece. And he is the number 1 most threatening player in the league, and that has been widely known since game 5. So since then, Aundra has been coming up against opposition that no acupuncture is the one to watch, and he is still managing to get enough blitzes to rack up these casualties. So that's the other way of looking at it. I think the answer is definitely towards the latter. I do think the numbers they're out there. There's no way this player should have as many casualties as he does, and yeah, potentially that might dry up a little bit in the league. But you also have to, recognize that Endra is constantly getting 2 die blitzes on him against opposition that know that he wants to do that. And why should that suddenly start stopping in the playoffs? So yeah, acupuncture is amazing. And I can't believe I'm saying that in a team that has a Skaven thrower with plus move, plus agility block, by the way. Crazy. Okay, so highlights. Though it was a loss, for me, the highlight was the match against Bear With Me. Like I said in the league performance bit, I think Andrew should have won that game. So yeah, that was to me a real highlight. And then the rest of the highlights I think are in the last 3 games, beating Zomcons and drawing with both New Balls Please and It's a Skull. So if you look at the top 4, I think should have beaten It's a Skull, draw with New Balls Please, got really unlucky with a GFI against me, and who knows how that game would have turned out, and I think should have beaten, at least drawn against Jim's Bear With Me. So we're potentially looking at, a team that has the biggest upset potential here. So going into strengths, very quick one obviously is acupuncture and the removals. If acupuncture manages to keep his casualty stats up, he is going to remove players, and that's going to make games a lot easier for holistic medicine. Next one is their unpredictability. This is maybe a bit of a cop-out one, but I don't think Andrew would mind me saying it, because I think that's very much the type of style he wants to go for. He's the most reckless player in the league, I think, by quite a bit. He'll throw goblins on turn 1. He'll run goblins through multiple tackle zones. He made against Hensau, I think, like a 5+4+4+3+3+2+ blitz, something absolutely wild like that. And that style of play, I think, doesn't work so well in a league format where you have a lot of games and it tends to balance itself out. But in a playoff knockout, that unpredictability can be huge, in the playoffs, maybe he won't fail the GFI after a goblin throw and he'll win these games. So yeah, that absolutely, I think, really could. He just needs to get a little bit luckier with some of these rolls. Another strength, I think, is his goblin usage. I think we mainly saw this against Hensau. Really good at kind of setting up goblins in really annoying positions, and I think he is very strong against teams that want to slowly push down the pitch, because those teams tend to have a little bit of trouble when you just line up a bunch of players in front of them, and Andrew then slips in goblins behind them as well to really kind of rattle the cage, if you excuse the pun. And then that really works well as well with acupuncture, because you set up a screen and then you just snipe with acupuncture. So I think what I think Andrew needs is a bunch of matches where he's going up against slow, bashy teams, and I think he has a really good chance of beating them. Yeah, and that is holistic medicine. And then finally, we're finally done with 16 mutual friends. Okay, so how did the league go? So they finished 7th, and it was a real push towards the end to make it into the upper bracket. So barring the blip against Yannick from round from round 11 to 17, the Wood Elves, they just soared up the table and into the upper bracket. Big wins against, like myself, against Bellatorious that we're going to in the highlights, that just kind of flew him up from the lower bracket into the upper bracket, and I think he'll be very, very pleased with his 7th place finish, and well deserved as well. But however, it's been a very Wood Elf season, so only 64% SPP retained, which is the joint lowest in the league, along with Yannick's New Balls Please. You do kind of expect that with Wood Elves, but it's still nasty, and they go into the playoffs with only 10 players and not enough to buy an 11th, and their first match they're missing the tree and the catcher. So yeah, that's rough. That is really, really rough. Now it's an upper bracket game, so even if Peter does lose and hopefully doesn't take any casualties, he potentially can go into the next game with all his players back, and then if the winnings, I think Wood Elf linemen are like 70k, so the winning should get him enough to buy 11 players. Or if he beats Jim, same thing, goes into the upper bracket with hopefully 11 players. So yeah, it's been a good season, but definitely a costly one. Key player. It's very tempting to name a War Dancer here, and it's unusual that you don't in a Wood Elf team, but I actually think the key player for Peter's team is Ares Pennysaver, who's a level 3 leader, accurate thrower. The reason I say that is because this team passes any more than anyone else in the league, and the thrower is an absolutely key element to that. So while this team has several really, really good receivers, the thrower is the player that Peter looks for. You can see him in his games. Peter looks to Aries. He wants to get the ball on the thrower, and then he wants to use that piece to throw and play the style of play that Peter very much wants to play. You cannot do that as safely as Peter does it without this piece. So that's why he gets my key player, even though I think it was Animal Spirit who single-handedly won the game against Bellatorious. I still give it to Penny Saver. So highlights. Beating 4th place Recipe Street 2-3, and comfortable 2-3 as well. Went 3-1 up, I think, at one point. Beating the Bombshells in a really crucial game for the upper bracket, and drawing 1-1 with Bear With Me, becoming only one of 2 teams not to lose to the league leaders. And as I said, hours ago now at this point, Jim is playing a leap style of play which you would expect only experienced coaches to know how to play against. And Peter won't mind me saying he's not that experienced of a coach. I'm not that experienced. I'm talking about players like Yannick and Jim. They're experienced. So while you would expect Yannick to have a good idea how to defend against that, Peter really, really kind of showed up and showed strategy. That his level of experience you wouldn't really expect from. So yeah, absolutely, really, really well played in that game. And he's coming up against Jim again in the playoffs. So, if he's able to produce that level of strategy again, we're in for a really, really good game. So what are the strengths? Well, the first off is he's playing a Wood Elf team. So Wood Elves, they start off pretty mediocre, very reliant on War Dancers. And you can only really afford 1 or maybe 2 if you skim out in the rerolls. And the idea then is they get very, very strong. So they're kind of like the agile version of Chaos. And I think you can see that in Peter's results. I think the league was a slow start, but as the league closes out and he's getting players leveled up, he's become a way more dangerous team. And now he's going into the playoffs with level 2, 4, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3. So lots of levels on these players, so they're all becoming just a lot more dangerous. 2+ strength pieces, level 4 war dancer, and a plus strength lineman. Some very, very nice stat ups there, and a very, very strong passing game. It's between Peter and David, I think, for the best passing teams in the league. But you have the catcher, Mr. Finish Line, and both War Dancers, Animal Spirit, and the Climax. They all act as the receivers for Aries Penny Saver, and between them they have 17 touchdowns, which is just huge. And the type of play that Peter likes to do is he kind of keeps these players relatively together, so that 2 of them can clear tackle zones for the one that he wants to receive, and it makes defending against that quite difficult. And he has been very, very successful playing that style of Blood Bowl. Okay, so those are all the teams. We've been recording for what seems like a while. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments in the channel, and I'll see you guys in the playoffs. Okay, bye.